headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Tru, thank you so much for your time. We've met under totally different circumstances and a different debate, which is cool. Now, so the headline, and I'm taking from the Voice newspaper, the headline, as headlines always will be, they've got to put bums on seats, so to speak, is that's it, I'm not going to perform to all white audiences. What's the actual story? Just tell me about your experience, what the Academy is and your experience that's led you to this conclusion.
Yes, of course, and thank you for having me, Tricia. So we're Aston Performing Arts Academy, and we've been going for 20 plus years, but for the last, I would say, 15 years, we've been providing high-end quality professional entertainment for corporate events across the Midlands. So we're looking at gala dinners, awards, balls, all of these great lavish events. And, we're fortunate enough to be able to do that and to be in such a privileged position. However, because we're in such a privileged position, we're going to these spaces and, week in, week out, we're performing at these events, but we're not seeing anybody that looks like us in the crowd. We work with about 100 young people, predominantly from a disadvantaged background, and who are predominantly Black. And it came to the point where our young people, particularly aged between, I would say, 16 and 28, who we're bringing to these spaces, started to recognise and notice this. And then they started to count how many Black people were on seats in comparison to how many Black people were waiting the tables and entertaining the audience. And there was always a huge disparity. Then they started to coin the word, let's go and see how much the help is at this event. And this started to concern me as a director and a leader, because on one hand, I am telling them, dream big, you can be anything you want to be, the world is your oyster, you go out there and smash it. But then we're bringing them to said spaces, and all they're seeing that represents them are people who are cleaning, waiting the tables or entertaining, and nobody at the seats. So we've been battling this for a while. It's not just been a flippant decision. It's been actually what we do want to say to our corporate clients is, in a city like Birmingham that's so diverse and multicultural, we should be seeing people in the audience that look like us. So if we go to an event, or we would actually like events to have more people sitting in seats than on stage. So typically we do events for about 500 people. We're talking 3% of audience members to be Black. If 3% of the audience members are not Black, then unfortunately we do not want to go in that space, because...
But how will you know, though, Tru? How will you know when you could book, such and such an awards? How will you know in advance what your audience makeup is going to be? Or do you just walk on stage, have a look around and say, nah, and walk off?
And that's a very good question. And that's all in the kind of suitability criteria when we're doing our negotiations. So one of the questions that we will ask the event organizer is, what steps are you making to make your event inclusive, to make your event, you represent the city? And at that point, there should be some form of adequate answer to appease us that actually this event will be well represented. And it might allow them to think about what they can be doing, because, a lot of things have happened, and we constantly hear that actually, these are ticketed events, we can't force Black people to go to these events. Actually, for a large part of these events, they're corporate companies that are coming to these events who book tables. Now, this, of course, brings in a wider discussion around systemic and institutionalised racism, and who's, in such certain seats and positions in such organisations. But then also, accountability should also be given to event organisers, because they also too can make their events inclusive and appealing to a different demographic.
Have you actually tried doing this with a company, with any, and have you had any success if you have?
Absolutely. So when we made the announcement about 10 days ago, we've had a plethora of companies giving us a call saying, they really want to. Yeah. And one of the questions has been, that's okay. how are you going to ensure that your event is inclusive? And they've reeled up a list of things which we're happy with. And listen, Tricia, if we go to the event and it's not as inclusive as we would like it to be, but we can see that the event organizer has tried and not been complacent, then again, that's okay. But we're just trying to get the event organizer to think a little bit more about representing the city. But then also the young people that are on stage, how are they going to feel when they're performing to people who don't look like them, but then they can see that the Black people who do look like them are cleaning up after the people on the tables.
No, I know. I look, you know, listen, I can tell you, I've gone to, where I am in the States, I've gone to events where people have naturally, they said, oh, you're with the band. You must be with the band because I'm the only Black person. I said, I can't sing. You must be with the band. But when you say they've come out with some, you know, some of the companies who've thankfully, brilliant, good work on your part, have contacted you and said, how can we be more inclusive? What sort of advice do you end up giving them advice as to how they can do that, or do that? And if so, what kind of advice do you give them?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. So I am an event organizer myself, and I do these types of events in terms of awards. Some of the things that I say looking at is, number one, you know, how your judges, your ambassadors, you know, do they have any Black people on your judging panel? Do you nominate Black people? Are Black people finalists in these award categories? And some things that you could do for the event itself. You know, how many events have you gone to where there's a Black host, for example? There's not very many in the Midlands that we go to where there's a Black host that's hosting the ceremony. Or even just reflecting, you know, the Black culture, maybe having a Caribbean twist on the cuisine, or an African twist, maybe jollof rice or jerk chicken. You know, there's a plethora of things to do to make Black people feel welcome and inclusive, where they would want to go to these spaces and want to go to these events. And, you know, I keep hearing people say, oh, you know, it's a ticketed event, it's open for everybody. And that's all good and well, but
it depends where you advertise, doesn't it? It depends how you advertise, where you advertise, all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And what they have to do is open access and remove barriers to access. So things like price, things like where you're advertising. It's almost like saying, you know, you know, the door is unlocked, but we're not going to hold it open for you. So whilst you can come, you know, and the door is unlocked for you to come in, actually, we're not going to hold it open and welcome you. And it's just small little things that you could do to make your event a little bit more inclusive to reflect the city that we live in.
It's almost a shame, though, that they're getting that advice for free. You know, part of you thinks there are so many organisations out there that can actually be advising these companies, not just on the events, but on their board membership and everything like that as well. So, Tru, I'm so glad that in 10 days, this is sort of, you know, you've made a big difference by this headline, so people should applaud you on this. So thank you so much. I'm just amazed at how coming out and saying, you know what, this isn't good enough from an events you know, academy has been so powerful. More power to you. Well done. Thank you for having me. And I just, this is all the event organisers out there. We need to move the conversation away from just what's represented on the stage to who's in the audience. And I think for a long time, we've always said, oh, we need to have a balanced panel. We need to have women, Black people, Asian community all represented on the panel. But actually, your responsibility doesn't stop just on the stage. You also have to look at who's in the room and who's at the table.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.